Hello everyone, it's Shel from Paper Octio Studio. By popular demand, we have the paper painted collage mixed media canvas Octopus. Recently I did a sea turtle and I said if you guys want to see the matching, coordinating canvas that's going along with it that is an octopus, then let me know. I'm kind of becoming the octopus lady because I already have 2 octopus videos on this channel, and here's my 3rd one. But the person who commissioned these wanted an octopus and another sea creature for twin grandsons who really like sea animals. So I am making these coordinating canvases. So the process for this mixed media canvas is very similar to this sea turtle. I started out, of course, by sketching my idea onto the canvas using my Pintail Graph Gear 1000, which has 2B graphite in it. I'll link that below. A lot of people lately have been asking me about my pencil. I really like a mechanical drafting pencil, and I feel that it helps me with my drawing to have this softer lead or graphite. It's not really lead, it's graphite. In it, because it quickly makes a darker line on whatever I'm drawing on, and also it will smudge if I want to use it as a kind of like a version of a charcoal. So I sketched my octopus and my sand or coral or whatever it is at the bottom, and then seaweed. And when you see the comparison to the sea turtle at the end, there'll be a picture of both of them together. The octopus is a larger animal. Well, it doesn't have to be, but it can be a larger animal. And so I made the seaweed more narrow because the perspective is further away. So if I was to, well, the way I think of it, if I was to make them the same size, the octopus's face would be up closer. And I do have a video of a close-up octopus that I made for a viewer during one of my drawings. I can't remember if it was the 2000 or the 3000, but anyway, that one was a really like a more close-up of and personal of that octopus, and I could have chosen that perspective if I wanted to, because it would have been more in tune with the size of the sea turtle. However, there are very large sea turtles and small octopuses as well. So I guess I'm overthinking it, but I'm just trying to tell you about my my process and how I think about what I'm doing when I'm trying to make 2 canvases that are different but yet coordinate with each other because it's for twin boys. So my next process is to do what I call underpainting, which is just a very messy application of color. The reason that I do this, I'm going to be using deli paper, which is translucent or can be translucent depending on how many layers of paint are on it. So I want to make sure that the canvas isn't completely white underneath, because that just takes a whole heck of a lot longer to layer paper on top of paper on top of paper in order to get the color saturation that I want. I am using bright colors for these canvases because they are for younger people. Also, I just like bright colors. I mean, I use bright colors more often than anything, but I don't know, I just think younger people would like brighter things. So once my underpainting is dry, and I did let it dry for several hours because there was quite a few layers of paint. The excess paint that I had, I'm not showing you this, but I did a little bit more jelly printing with it. If you watch the sea turtle, you'll see that the way that I get the papers that I'm using is to just use some deli paper, leftover deli paper that has been on my desk, and I jelly print it using the same paint that I used on the canvas to make the underpainting. And so that's how I get the papers. But I also had papers left over from the sea turtle because I didn't use them all up. So then all I did was just use up my excess paint to make a couple more prints to use if I need them. So my next, well, I went and I collaged the coral reef at the bottom, and I did use darker colors, the purple and black combination. Those are the Dylusions, marble black and squeeze grape, I think they're called. And that was what I did at the bottom. Then I realized that I'm going to need to have all these little skinny seaweeds. This canvas is going to be more complicated than the sea turtle because things are smaller, and also there's a lot of things. There's a lot of seaweed. There's a lot of legs and things curving in and on top of each other and underneath each other, overlapping, and so it's kind of like a puzzle. So I'm going ahead and drawing out my patterns for the pieces that I'm going to make to put on the top onto deli paper using my graphite pencil, because once I start paper painting the background, it's going to cover up a lot of those lines. I don't completely cover it up, but I do bump into the lines, and so I needed to do my drawings beforehand. So then for the background, I'm using a variation of the London blue and the turquoise, vibrant turquoise papers, and also throwing in a little bit of cobalt blue, and there's white mixed in, and they're prints. So what I want is I want the darkest color to be at the bottom. Right now the canvas is upside down. I know that. I'm doing it upside down. But I want the top of the water to be lighter, kind of ombre blending down into the bottom part of the canvas, which is right now the top. And so I'm choosing papers based on that concept of trying to go from dark to light or light to dark. Because in an ocean, and this must be a pretty darn shallow ocean, or I guess maybe it's a reef, so it's like close to the top of the water, but the idea is that light shines through the water, so the top of the water would be lighter than the bottom. That's what I'm trying to go for here. It's a lot of talking for a little concept, but you know what I'm saying. So I'm just kind of picking and choosing these different papers, tearing up little pieces, and then fitting them in. Sorry, it's late. It's late at night. I should be in bed. Fitting them in so that I get the idea of what I want. Also, I'm putting darker colors around the main body of the octopus as well, because I want the contrast between the yellow, red, orange colors that I'm going to use on the octopus and the blue turquoise, light turquoise colors that I'm using on the water. This canvas took me about 8 hours to complete. It was more complex than the sea turtle. The sea turtle took me about 6. This one I had to think about the legs and overlapping and underlapping the seaweed and getting all the little seaweed strands, so it was a little bit more time consuming. But yeah, I've sped it up, chopped it up, and made it into 20 minutes for you. If only I could do this in 20 minutes. That would be great. So my background is all complete, and now I am working on the seaweed with all these different grass green and squeezed lime, or whatever it's called, fresh squeezed lime. I'm using the Dylusions paints. Then there are also a few Liquitex Basics paints thrown in to make a few of the darker tones, like the darker reds and a little bit of the darker blues. I did use a few of the Liquitex Basics, but it's mostly Dylusions because I wanted the really bright pop of color that these paints give. They are bright paints. So I'm happy about that. So this is a piece of deli paper, and I've traced out, remember I was tracing out my patterns, gluing the deli paper onto, gluing the painted deli paper, printed deli paper onto those and then cutting them out. And that's how I get my skinny little lines. When I first started paper painting, I literally tore paper and lined everything up. But this is my new preferred method. I think it gives a cleaner look. And it's not so fussy. I would spend hours just tearing tiny little pieces and lining them up onto the lines of my drawing. Those were some complex ones, and I did some very large ones that now live in Belgium because a guy in Belgium had commissioned them, so they went over there. I haven't seen him in a long time. So then the seaweed that's on the left-hand side, I'm not going to glue on yet, but I am putting all the seaweed on that's on the right 2/3 of the canvas. And you can see areas where I didn't put any paper because I had lines that showed that those were going to be covered by the octopus legs. So now for the octopus legs, I'm doing a blend of reds, oranges, and yellows. And in areas where, you know how the octopuses can twist their legs, and you might see, it's like the underside has a bunch of suckers on it, and then the top side is smooth, and they twist and turn in the water, and you can sometimes see the sucker side and sometimes see the other side. So I'm making the sucker side the lighter color, and then if the legs are in the area close to the body, I'm making that the darker part, and then kind of blending it out to lighter on the ends. So I might use a very deep red right next to the body and then blend it out. It's paper painting, that's why it's called that, because I'm putting my shadows and highlights and colors, the paper in specific areas based on my idea of where I would have put the paint. That's why it's called that. So these are two of the legs that I separated out, and then I end up separating out a lot more of the legs because I realize I can't do the whole octopus as a cohesive unit. It's really going to have to be done in sections so that I can make everything overlap and twist around, and yeah, it's going to have to be like that. So you'll see me make another sketch in a bit. But the first two legs I'm showing you. So this is my whole octopus, and I said, okay, I don't need that leg up there, and I don't need that one because I've already done them. And then I'm like, oh, well, this one overlaps the head, and this one overlaps that one, which overlaps the head, and that one overlaps that one. And so then I started realizing that I was going to need to do them separate. But what I do is, unless there's a hard line separating the body and the leg, and some of those there are, but if it's ones that are blending in, I don't cut a hard line at the end of the leg when I trim it out. I just tear it, and then that way I can blend it in to the body if I need to with more paper collaged over the top. So this part is just going to be the bulbous part of the octopus and then two of the legs. And I'm starting with the lightest color at the top where theoretically light could hit and shine off, and then blending it down to the darkest color. And this really is a great example of how I do a gradient. I overlap the papers. I let the more translucent paper overlap the more paint intensive paper in order to blend it. It's just something that I've been practicing for a long time, and I really do like the deli paper over regular printed paper. When I first started paper painting, I did it with packing paper from my many Amazon boxes. They would often be packed with brown paper, and I would paint that paper and use it for collage materials, which is a whole different look. It's different. If I had any of those, I'd show them to you, but I've pretty much either given them away or sold them, so I don't have them anymore. But This is the one thing that I do on commission. I do paper painting, and I also have a lot of family fans who want these for gifts and stuff. So they're popular in my family and friends. So I've made a lot of them over probably the last 3 years maybe, but don't have a whole lot to show for it because I don't own them. They're out of the house. But I really am preferring the deli paper as my collage resource. I like the way it looks. I like the way it layers. The translucency of it on some pieces versus the multi-layers of paper on other pieces. It makes a lot more variation for me to play with, which to me this is play. So I have a lot of fun doing this, and I get into it so much that I will sit there and do it for 6 hours without even realizing, without eating or drinking or anything, just so focused on doing it that I don't even realize time has passed. It's great. So now I've cut out that 2 legs and the bulb of the octopus, his head or whatever. Do you realize they kind of look like aliens? Have you ever noticed that? They look like aliens. Like the human concept of aliens. We don't really know what aliens look like. So I'm going to put this part on, and this is the largest part. So in order to really make sure there aren't any bubbles in it, I dip my finger into the medium, and then I just press really hard. I press with my finger to make sure that everything is pressed down and there aren't any bubbles. I am using the Liquitex matte gel medium. It's not the liquid one. It's more thick and heavy and works a lot better for this process than any of the other glues that I've tried. I like this one. It's called gel, but it's still kind of silky. So now I've completed the entire octopus paper painting portion, and I'm going to add some shadows and highlights using my Stabilo All pencil, is the black one, and blending with a regular round size 1 or 2 watercolor brush. I like how this does add a shadow. I like lines around things, and so this portion isn't technically still paper painting, but it is what I do now. I didn't always do this, but this is what I do to add in a shadow, and then I'll add in some highlights. I already have shadows and highlights, but I want that deeper, darker black underneath to give more definition. Then for the suckers, I'm doing them in white with a Posca pen. There was just no way that I could possibly, with this is a 9x12 canvas, it's not a large canvas, so I just couldn't see tearing them, trying to tear little tiny circles that are, so tiny. So I just decided to paint them on, and I did that with a Posca pen and then blending with my watercolor brush while it's still wet. Then I'm adding shadows to them using a Pitt Artist Brush Pen, which is a permanent pen that has indie ink in it. And this one is like a medium gray. Just adding more dimension to the suckers. In the center and around the edge, I'm adding like a little shadow. Then my last thing to do is to add some random highlights with the white pen on the seaweed and blend it with my finger while it's still wet. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Leave me a comment saying that you're happy that I did it. Subscribe if you haven't, obviously, and then, pin it or post it on Facebook or something. And all these things really help me a lot. So that's it for me. Thanks. Bye-bye.